Yeah, good afternoon, friends, and a warm welcome to this discussion, to this conversation that I'm going to have with the author of this very unusual book. Unusual for Gerard to have written this book because, uh, I've known Gerard since 2008 when it so happened that Gerard one day walked into our newsroom at the Gomantak Times as a new recruit in 2008. And, I've been a journalist in Goa since 1992, here in Goa. And in the mid 90s, we faced this exodus of talent from journalism in Goa. And very few people, talented people, uh, used to come into the profession in the mid 90s and the late 90s. So it was quite a surprise that a young Bachelor of Science chemistry graduate walks into a newspaper office for a job and to perhaps build his career in journalism. So, in that sense, it was very unusual that Gerard walked for a job in journalism, and he did, and he stuck on, which was rare in those days in 2005, 2006, and 2008 when Gerard came in. So Gerard is a very unassuming guy. He's very quiet. He's not very talkative unless you know him well. So when Gerard's book got published and it became public that Gerard had written a book, I was stunned. Having known Gerard for 15 years and more, I was stunned that Gerard actually authored a book. And that too, such a strong subject as crimes of passion, a non-fiction. Uh, so let's having given you a little bit of a background about Gerard, let's get into the subject of the conversation, Gerard and his book. Uh, you know, journalism, they normally say, we are both journalists, so journalism will definitely come into the conversation very often. Journalism, they say, is literature in a hurry. And it literally is literature in a hurry. And when you do things in a hurry, you do a lot of blunders, right? Right. So the journalism we do day in and day out has inherently a number of errors in it. So when I read or started reading Gerard's book, I realized that it is refined journalism. Journalism with most of its errors removed. So Gerard has written this book in a very journalistic form. And to start this conversation with Gerard, I would ask him at the very outset, what really inspired you to write the book?
Thank you, Ashley. So this question is, in fact, I am still trying to answer to myself. Why did I set about to write this book? And when I first was offered the opportunity, why don't you try and write a book? There will be many willing publishers. You write quite well. I had actually said I wasn't really sure whether I would finish writing it, because writing a book, not just writing a book and faffing general thoughts from the top of your head, but writing a book that is beyond question, that even if tomorrow somebody wants to sue you, you will be able to back your book with facts and with documents. And at the same time write it in a way that is very interesting, that will capture the reader's attention, appeared to me as a quite daunting task. This is my first book, by the way.
Jara, I was just going to, Jara, I interrupt you. I was just going to tell, for the benefit of the audience, this is Gerard's maiden book and the only one he has published till date.
So, yeah, as I grappled with the idea, I spoke to some of my colleagues in journalism, and they said writing a book is just a longer form of journalism. You've been doing this day in, day out. You maybe write 4 stories a day, 5 stories a day in a hurry, and you get everything more or less accurate in a way that the readers of the newspaper will be able to read and rely on. You just now have more time to yourself, you have more time to gather the facts, write it in the same style, and write it comprehensively, and you will be able to do a good job. So the since I got the positive feedback, I decided the first step is to start writing. And when I finished the first story and I read it back to myself, I said, okay, this I quite felt happy with what I had written. So I said, I can do this. And then I began to search for more and more stories that people would be able to read and find interest in. And coming to your main question, why did I write it on this topic? I mean, passion is a very racy issue, not something that is associated with me or my being. But it is also something that grabs eyeballs, and people have interest in reading about stories. So if you read the newspapers or you watch TV, you will see the most sensational crime stories are the ones that grab the most attention or the most eyeballs. So hopefully people will like reading something that doesn't really try to sensationalize crime, but tell the story in an exciting way, the way people will like.
So, was one of the inspirations to write the book on this particular subject of crimes, uh, the reason of, we do cover crime in our daily routine, right? And what we put out in our stories and what is read in the newspapers leaves out a lot of details that would, make up the whole story. So, did that missing links of crimes inspire you to write this book?
Yes, in fact, as a journalist, one of the things that troubled me the most as a journalist was that journalism or the stories we write tends to take us in one direction, a direction that is not based in facts, a direction that follows a kind of
Fits a template kind of a thing.
yes, it fits a template. Also, it follows conspiracy theories. It plays into conspiracy theories. It plays up conspiracy theories, which are not rooted in fact.
Which are partly fiction.
Fiction. Their motives are attributed to the criminals. Motives are attributed to
To societal sentiments.
societal sentiments, to the attackers, which are not really based
On the facts of the specific
on
case.
facts of the crime, in what
Yeah.
happened on the day. It is only when you go through the documents, you read testimonies, you read through witness statements before court, that you realize what must have been going on in the minds of both the victims
As
the
perpetrators.
and the perpetrators, and at the time that it happened. So just to give you a brief, this is a collection of 11 crime stories. Most of them are murders of men, in which the woman is the victim. In nearly all the cases, I think in except one case, the woman was the perpetrator. But the woman is generally the victim, and the attacker is generally the man.
No. Yeah. So before I go to the theme of the book, for the benefit of the audience, aspects, perhaps to attract attention and eyeballs. I'll take you to the first chapter of the book. You know, the murder of Maria Susairaj. Uh,
Neeraj. Neeraj was murdered.
Neeraj was murdered. Sorry,
Maria was blamed.
blamed for it. Yeah. So there was a newspaper that reported that the body of Neeraj was cut into 300 pieces, when the fact was it was just 6 pieces. So you know, the journalism we do and the crime that we report as journalists just has like maybe 30% of fact in it, and most of the rest of the story is interpretation and a bit of fiction to kind of attract readership. Now, as Gerard just explained, these are 11 crime stories, all 11 murders, in which 10, the perpetrator is the male and the victim are females. Only in one, the victim is
Yeah, the
victim is male, and
where
the
a woman
perpetrator
came
is
together with her paramour and
with a paramour and killed the
killed the
husband, the spouse. So, Gerard, I will, I've not finished reading the book. Okay, I've just read four chapters of it, and I found one striking feature. Uh, as you conclude the chapter, you bring in the aspect of the disadvantaged position of the fairer sex in India. So, is that a deliberate theme in the book, or?
that is something that occurred to me as I was writing the book. So in most of the cases, the woman ends up dead because she said no. She said no to somebody who claimed to love her or to have loved her, and she has either had enough of the so-called love, or she never wanted it in the first place. And because she said no, she was attacked and died or was killed. So what occurred to me is that in all of these cases, and I'm guessing in society in general, there is an inability or an unwillingness of a man to stomach rejection from someone whom he has pursued or someone whom he has set his focus on. And he has taken to violence in many ways. In many of the cases, the actual murder was not the first attack that the woman has faced. She was assaulted before or grievously injured before, and either because of these attacks has wanted to break away from the relationship, or has not wanted to continue with it. But in almost all of the cases, the woman has at multiple occasions tried to break away from this man, but because he was so pursuant, because he was so insistent on continuing with the relationship, sometimes the relationship is to totter on for a few months or years, but ultimately, because one party was never fully willing, the rejection continued, which forced the man to attack the woman. So what struck me was that in Indian society, a woman was not expected to have her own mind. She was supposed to have no agency of her own, just because I want you, you need to be mine. That kind of theme has run through most of the stories that I have covered in this book. And there are, of course, the theme is crimes of passion. A classic case of a crime of passion is when, you walk in on your partner and see him or her with another woman or man, and you are so enraged with the situation that you attack the third party, and the third party is dead. As in the case of Neeraj, who ended up dead because he was found with Maria, and the Navy officer who flew all the way from Cochin just to murder the man she was with. So these kind of cases are there, but they are not so prevalent. But more prevalent crime of passion is killing someone because she has said no.
Uh, Let us come to the case, that hit headlines and kind of dominated the media here in Goa and also in the West, in UK, from where the victim hailed, scarlet killing. Do you still get a sense that the real story is still not out?
If you read my book, then the real story is right there. But I do get a sense that if you have only followed the story by reading newspapers or reading what has been reported in the media or on TV, then you will be under the wrong impression that Scarlett Keeling was murdered because she had some secrets with her regarding the drug trade in India, in Goa, in Anjuna specifically, or that she was murdered because Samson de Souza wanted to rape her and murder her, and that is why she ended up dead on the sands of Anjuna beach. But if you read the story, or if you read how the story actually transpired, as is mentioned in the book, it doesn't even come across that it was a murder. Samson was ultimately convicted for culpable homicide, not amounting to murder, and sentenced to 10 years rigorous imprisonment. But if you see how the story followed, there was no intent itself. Scarlet killing. There is no doubt Samson wanted to take advantage of Scarlett on the night she walked into the Louis shack at Anjuna Beach. But what happened after that, which is mentioned in detail in the book, is really the reason why Scarlett ended up dead, and not some major conspiracy involving the Home Minister or the police. Then the role of the police in the probe is also.
Yeah, because there was a double probe there. No, there was the local police, and then it was taken over by the CBI. So I will come.
Two teams of local police.
Two teams of local police, yeah.
The first was by
Nelon, who got then suspended, and then we had a fresh team investigating the case.
I think Brasman is.
Yeah, so basically that again highlights the shortfall of journalism in telling the correct story, which can be undone by literature like yours.
I would hope so, because we journalists try to do it in the best way we can. I think since over the last 10 years, there has been a lot more focus on long form storytelling. Feature pages appear on the weekend, and but what we really lack is the willingness to come out and tell the true story, either because one paper is running or one media house is running with a separate narrative altogether, and if another media house comes up with a narrative that does not align with what the public have been led to believe, then journalists themselves are hesitant to go against what has been said so far.
That's perhaps the reason why Scarlet killing, the Scarlet killing is not Killing, but killing is her surname. Scarlet killing story was told the way it was told by the media, which was way off the mark.
Yes, that is true.
After reading your story on Scarlet killing, whatever was out there in the media, even in the media in UK, was totally off the mark. The media reported the case as if it was Scarlett was killed because she owned a lot of secrets of the narco trade in Goa, you know, and that she knew dons and which hardly was the story, which hardly was the case. So now let's get to your story on the Kerala convent case. Okay.
Yeah.
Before I proceed further, I just need to give you a little bit of an insight to Gerard's personal life. Uh, so Gerard is a seminarian, was a seminarian. He was a Jesuit for until uh, until short of being ordained a priest.
Some distance.
Some distance from being ordained a priest. So Gerard writing so passionately about the very dark story of the convent in Kerala was a surprise to me. Gerard, could you throw some light on what inspired you to include this particular story in this book?
So that story ended up in the book as a bit of an afterthought, and coincidentally, as I was writing the book, the Sessions Court in Kerala delivered, the CBI court in Kerala delivered a judgment on the case. The case actually dates back to the year 1991, in which a nun, a young nun, was found dead in the well of a convent. She was found dead. She was seen alive until 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. that morning, last seen alive. And the following morning, around 7 in the morning, she was found in the well, and her veil was found in the kitchen of the convent outside, just next to the well. What struck me of this case, I have by and large gone by the court judgment in reporting what has actually happened in the case. What struck me in this case was that no one seemed to know, or no one seemed to be willing to admit how she ended up in the well. Everyone said she jumped in the well on her own, which
So it was, there was an attempt to project it as a suicide.
there was an attempt to project it as a suicide, but there were blood stains on the kitchen floor, which no one seemed to explain how they ended up there. And it also threw a light on how, instead of trying to find justice or trying to really get to the bottom of how she ended up in the well, the entire missionary, the entire convent, the sisters, nuns, were trying to hush up the case. They were trying to conceal it, or pass it off as a suicide. Witnesses claimed they were being threatened. A police officer committed suicide. The first guy who took up the case, who was also Christian, he ended up committing suicide. And the entire focus was not on getting to the truth, but trying to cover up the truth.
To suppress the case and to kind of cover the mistakes of the investigation.
To cover the mistakes of the investigation and to cover the mistakes of the
Convent.
convent. Rather than get to the truth, they were trying to cover it.
Gerard, what was the experience when the publishing house actually accepted your manuscript?
I wasn't willing to believe. The editing process was quite comprehensive, because every sentence that you write is scrutinized and doubly scrutinized. They ask you for references. They ask you to, where did you get this from? How did you know this? How can you claim so and so is is the truth, on what is your basis. So that was quite a rigorous process that left me at my wit's end, I would say. But seeing the book in print, in the flesh rather, was quite an overwhelming experience. I just, because I'm quite a conservative guy, or known to be conservative, and I was kind of afraid that the reaction that it would elicit, what kind of, but I wanted people to read the book. I wanted people to know that, what happens in the heat of a moment. What happens when, uh, why do people end up killing each other? What goes on in their minds? We don't always know this, because almost never uh, does the attacker confess to his crime and say why he did it. Definitely not in court. Nobody pleads guilty. So we try and give, I have tried to give as much as insight as possible into what goes on. And one of the, as we discussed earlier, one of the drawbacks of journalism I have always faced in my 15 years as a journalist, I want people to know that what you're reading or what you're being told is not always the whole truth. And in this book, I have tried to bridge that gap.
Yeah, but we are both journalists, and not to kind of discredit the profession of journalism, it's not that it is deliberately done, It's not always the case that it is deliberately done. It's also the constraints of a deadline, you know. You got to finish your story at some point in time in the day. Because it has to go out on the newspaper in the morning. So that deadline constraints does prompt you to give out a story with the facts you have. They may not be all the facts that you have of that particular case. So that's one aspect of why journalism cannot tell the whole story. And then there are the other aspect, there is the other reason, which I think Gerard will also agree with me, where there are deliberate attempts to milk a story, for dividends that a newspaper normally thrives for. That is to attract eyeballs with sensationalism, and throw in a few fictional fictional stuff into a story.
Yeah, one of the biggest restraints we face as journalists is the police being very coy or very cagey about facts of a case. And we, of course, cannot afford to wait until the police come out and say, this is what happened. On the day a murder happens, nobody knows.
Yeah, because
What has happened?
normally the law compels the police to tell a story within 24 hours to the magistrate, right? To the judicial magistrate, and we as journalists cannot wait for the police to do that and then get the story from the court documents, because in that 24 hours we already have to put out our story to our readers,
But I would have preferred if the police were to be more upfront about facts, rather than trying to. The police are also very often afraid that what they tell the media may later be held
against them.
against them in the court of law, and may end up in an acquittal of an accused. If there is, for example, a variance in the statements made to the media and a variance in the police version presented before the court, a defense advocate or defense lawyer will always try and highlight this in a bid to acquit his client. So we are caught in a bind between what we know and what we have to put out. And we can't obviously wait until a criminal is convicted to tell the story. So this book has waited until all these people are convicted and has now told the story.
So basically, it boils down to the fact that what journalism can't do, literature can. Okay, so um, Gerard, I'll come back to that first aspect that I raised about the disadvantaged position of women in India, which comes out very clearly in a lot of your stories here. Uh, like, for example, the case of Grover, the first chapter. You quote a book by a journalist on that same crime. Uh, Sorry for this.
Yes.
Just bear with me. By Meena Bagel,
Minal Bagin.
yeah, Minal Bagel, yeah, uh, which kind of dwells faith, into the fate of Maria after the crime is over, and what it beholds for her in living the rest of her life.
Yes.
So this comes out in a lot of other stories as well.
Yes. So to give the audience a brief, the first story is about Maria Susairaj. She was an actress, a small-time actress in Kannada movies, and she was dating this Navy officer called Emil Jerome. But she was living in Mumbai, and on that night, she was with this person called Neeraj Grover, who was a TV executive. And Emil Jerome came to know that she was with Neeraj Grover. So he flew that same night from Cochin to Mumbai, knocked on her door at 7 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. in the morning, saw Neeraj Grover there, took out a knife from the kitchen and killed him there and there. So in the entire reportage of this story, right, the blame fell squarely on Maria's shoulders. It was what was she doing with Neeraj when she was to marry Emil. She became the cause of the murder, the reason behind the murder. Emil, nobody questioned why Emil murdered Neeraj. He, that adultery is not a crime, obviously, but neither was she married to Emil at the time. And the media started this campaign, you could say, against Maria. And once the judgment was delivered, Maria was let go. She was free to walk. She had spent 3 years in prison, and the only thing that she was convicted ultimately of was destruction of evidence, which is she helped dispose Neeraj's body. Uh, and the punishment for destruction of evidence is not even 3 years. But she had done more time than she was supposed to have done for destruction of evidence, because the trial took 3 years. And the whole situation became, because she was with him, he was justified in murdering her. So this is what women in India face, is what I realized myself as I was writing this book. Uh, a woman will be blamed for what a man does. If she will be called a gold digger, she will be called a what is the term? A family breaker, or what is it? Homebreaker. She will be called a homebreaker or home wrecker, uh, because and the man is almost always absolved of whatever he may or may not do.
Any other?
Question.
Yeah, okay. So we'll throw it open for questions from the audience. I see a very young audience, and please feel free to ask any question to the author. Or me.
Hi, Gerard. Congratulations on selecting an excellent topic for a book,
Thank you,
because
Augusto.
there's the scope of having more books in this vein are tremendous. I mean, you could have focused on itself, on Goa itself. Anyway, I read a couple of the stories I say, because it's a way you can read each of those chapters separately. I was puzzled by the way you wrote the Scarlet killing case, because we all know about it, and the way we as citizens got to know about that story was far more sensational than what you've written about. And so I was just wondering, have you missed something out? And why were all those details not written about? And what about that minister's son who was supposed to be involved in that? And okay, I mean,
Yeah. The Scarlet Killing case, in fact, my book, my story, my chapter on Scarlet Killing is the whole story. Everything else that you may have heard or not heard or been led to believe is just noise, politics, people trying to dethrone each other from the dub trade. Scarlett's mom trying to, of course, she was completely justified in trying to get justice for her daughter, but bringing in names of politicians who, if you follow the story, had no role to play in the killing. Where the government or the police did fail was in they very carelessly probed the case at the first instant. They assumed it to be, that
Drowning.
they assumed it to be a drowning, and they spoke to a few witnesses and concluded that it would have been a drowning, given what was known at the time of what happened. But the real story, the whole story, is what happened, how she ended up dead, is completely mentioned in the book. Everything else is fiction or noise, because there is a story and people want to keep it running and they bring in various aspects, but there is no basis. Thank you, Augusto, for your warm words.
Congratulations again. The books are not available at the store, so what is the situation? Why they're not available?
The books, I think, should be available, but if not, then you will get it at Broadway, at Varsha bookstall, or
Broadway.
yeah,
I
you'll
checked
get
at
it.
Broadway here. They
Ah.
said it's not there. So
Over?
that
Maybe they're sold out.
Wow. You are sold out, Gerard.
okay.
You will
The-
get it at Varsha
Okay,
for sure. You will get it at Broadway for sure.
Okay,
Margao, you will get it at Dog Ears.
My
And,
question is, when you write a collection of such stories involving real people, do you have any fear that sometimes you might have missed something and that might catch up with you later in a form of litigations or in the form of defamations, etc.? Have you thought about this deeply, or?
Yeah. In fact, I I worry about that all the time. I worry about it. You see, the affected people in a story, the family, the friends, they sometimes do not want to be painted in a poor light, right? Or even the family of the attackers. And this book always that risk comes with that. So I have tried my best to go as per the documents, the testimonies before the judges, and I mean, this is something we face not as authors but also as journalists.
Yes.
So it is not something new, but it is a part of our life. So we have to go with it.
Apparently, as journalist, you get away with it because Rosario just said that 30% is generally the fact and 70%.
That's because of various reasons.
No, I am just. Yes, no, it's okay.
Yeah, because not everyone decides to sue, right? But if someone does decide to sue, then you will have to.
Yeah, like what Augusto said also, what he knew about the Scarlet killing case from the media coverage he absorbed in those days in 2008 is completely different from what the story is in the book. So it kind of tallies with my remark that a lot of what is seen in produced by journalism is fiction, is far from the fact. Any other reader?
Do we have any more questions? Anything
Yeah,
last
so
word?
Gerard, two things. We have a very young audience. I'm sure a lot of them are literature students. So two things. You are now a journalist, author journalist. So your advice for aspiring authors, and two, your advice for aspiring journalists.
Aspiring journalist is the more difficult one to give advice because the situation is changing and is fluid. If you have a story to tell, you can be successful in both as an author and as a journalist if you're committed to wanting to tell a story or many stories. Take it up if you have that commitment and if you are willing to persist. It is not easy and the challenges are many. At times you will be constantly questioning yourself. You will be made to believe
Questioning yourself in terms of your ability.
in terms of your ability, in terms of why am I doing this, to what end, and but the reception, the having the satisfaction of your conscience that you have done what you could, you have put out to the world what you wanted to say. Nothing will beat that satisfaction.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gerard. That's true. It's you're very vulnerable being a writer, and you suffer from a lot of self-doubt when you write a book. Am I the right person to tell this story? Should I tell the story? What are the consequences of telling the story? And I think as writers, that is something that we have to learn to live with and, use writing as our expression. Thanks again very much, Gerard and Ashley. Thanks very much for the audience. We have a lunch break now, and I think we'll be back here in Aboli at 2:30. So thank you everyone again for coming.
Thank you.